Welcome, everyone, to St. Matthew's Church as we begin the month of August here in 2025. We're back in Luke chapter 5 here as we continue our study of Luke. We are just about ready for verse 27, Luke 5:27. And some Bibles will say the calling of Levi because Luke identifies this person as Levi. As with some of us, we have more than one name, a longer name, and so this person that is called Levi here, we typically identify as Matthew. Right, it's another name for Matthew, who, being here at St. Matthew's Church, is, of course, an important person in the story to us. So, we had just wrapped up with the healing of the guy who was lowered down on the mat. That has happened. It's probably, all of this is probably now taking place in Capernaum. You can imagine that the buzz has started with this big crowd that was at the house. The man has picked up his mat and walked. People in town are talking about what's going on. And now it starts off in 27 by saying, after this, why don't we start down in the corner with Dalton, chapter 5, verse 27.
Later, when he went out, he saw a tax collector, Levi by name, at his seat in the custom house, and said to him, "Follow me."
Jesus calls to this person who is a tax collector, or what other translations do you have? Publican, right? That's what we say, the publican. He's there in your
tax office.
Tax office. Other translations? Booth. It's kind of like the toll booth. You can imagine that people are coming through the area. Capernaum is kind of a commercial crossroads to a degree, especially for the fishing industry. And so it's kind of a toll booth there to sit and collect the taxes. Verse 28, Pam, please.
And Levi got up and left everything and followed him.
He left everything, or other translations. He forsook all. He gave everything up. He left everything to go and follow at that call. Now, this is Luke recording. He just gives us a little blip there. There might have been a longer conversation, but there's apparently not a whole lot that Matthew has heard who this guy is. And the fact that this wandering rabbi would call him, Matthew is willing to leave everything. Now, when you hear everything, what do you think of?
His business.
His business, right. Now, he's the tax collector. Yeah, he works for the Romans collecting taxes in this booth or whatever exactly is. But in our reality, this is a business, and it's a very profitable business. To be a tax collector for the Romans there in the Holy Land at that time, of course, you know, we've talked before about how they added a little to the top, and that was just that was how the system worked. They tended to be very wealthy, and there will be other clues as we read this section that seems to tell us that Matthew is very well off, and yet he's willing to at once leave and follow him. And the word for follow there, the Greek word is a continuing action verb again. So it means that he follows, and he follows continuously. Matthew is making a total change in his life where now he is going to become, not just at this moment, but he is going to devote his life now to following Jesus. Then 29 gives us a little bit more of a clue into what his socioeconomic situation was. Judy D, please.
And Levi made him a great feast in his house, and there was a large company of tax collectors and others sitting at table with them.
A great feast. Other translation. Banquet is often used. Literally, the word means a great big
reception.
Reception. That's the most literal way of translating it. A big reception. And think of that difference for banquet or feast. That does communicate. But when you hear a reception, what different does reception connote for you?
Wedding.
It could be.
Jesus was a guest of honor.
This is somebody where you're welcoming a guest of honor, right? He is having this guest of honor come to his house, and who is invited?
Tax collectors.
Tax collectors are there. Luke does not say, but Mark and Matthew both say, and sinners. Interesting that Matthew makes a point of including that, and this is, I mean, at least tradition would say this is him drawing from his memory of who he invited to his house, or at least his students who are writing this down. He includes that. But Luke, writing to a Gentile audience, decides not to belabor that point. Writing to this audience, he mentions that the tax collectors are there. Whoever is all there, they are what in society?
Low.
Low. They're actually they're wealthy from the Roman perspective.
They're rich.
They're probably well off. Many of them are.
Dishonest.
Probably many dishonest. That's probably true. I hadn't thought about that. They're
pretty hated too.
That's it. They're hated. These are the outcasts. And so you're not going to have any religious leaders who are there invited. I mean, they're at least not going to show up. They're probably not invited because Matthew wouldn't even move in those circles. Certainly would know who they were, but these would not be people who would be liked. When Zeffirelli does this in Jesus of Nazareth, it's, of course, soon after he's called Peter. And the way Zeffirelli pictures is Peter's outside and won't come in because he hates Matthew because Matthew is the local tax collector and Peter's a fisherman. Now, that's Zeffirelli's artistic license there, but I kind of picture kind of the scene happening somewhat like that, that this is shocking that Jesus has gone in there with all of these people and they're eating with him, or other translations.
Sitting at table with them.
Sitting at table. Could be more literally sitting at meat. Sitting at meat. Now picture the time. They don't actually sit at tables, regardless of Da Vinci's portrayal of the Last Supper. How do they dine at this time?
Reclining.
They're reclining. Yeah. So think of that. Think of, I remember, Carolyn, your mother would always talk about, you too, you always kept the menus from all the Christmases past, right? All of the, I mean, big family, having that gathering, having all those people in your house. Now picture if you're not sitting at a table, but you're lying on couches. Everybody's got their own couch. Think of what does that tell you about the space needed for that.
That must have been a huge room.
It must be a huge room, or at least as houses were constructed, then a huge inner courtyard. What does this tell us more about Matthew?
He was rich.
Matthew must be very rich. He must be very rich to host something like this with all of these people. You can picture it from the movies, you know, old biblical movies where you've got, or not necessarily biblical, but movies of the Roman era, where the emperor is laying there on his couch and in the big room, big hall with everybody lying there. Capernaum's smaller scale than the palace, but this is pretty big stuff. This is a big room with big people. This is a big affair, and literally that it says that he's sitting at meat. What also does that tell you? It's another thing that this is rich. This is not just some little meal. The fact that they're sitting at meat in an era when that's kind of expensive, this is a big, elaborate feast. Matthew is wealthy. He leaves it all behind to follow. In Matthew 19, Jesus says to the disciples, "Truly I say to you, a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. And again I say to you, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God." When his disciples heard this, they were exceedingly amazed, saying, "Well, then who can be saved?" Jesus heard them and said to them, "With men this is impossible. With God all things are possible." Jesus calls Matthew. The Holy Spirit works through the call. Matthew is brought to follow Jesus, and now he throws this feast, and who is there besides Jesus?
Sinners.
All the sinners, the other tax collectors, all the outcasts from society. Matthew, as soon as he starts to follow, shares the word with others. Significant part of looking at this meal. But not everybody's happy. Gene 30, please.
Pharisees and their scribes were complaining to his disciples, saying, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?"
So now we hear all these different words. There's the Pharisees, Sadducees, scribes, teachers of the law, different things are used. Basically, what this is saying here is these are Pharisees. There's no Sadducees present. These are the Pharisees who tend to be much more wrapped up in the jot and tittle of the law, who are watching things very closely. And so they say, why does he eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners? Complained to his disciples, or do you have other translations?
Grumbling.
Grumbling, that's good.
Murmured against.
Murmuring against, that's good. The word in Greek is egogosin, which is onomatopoeia. It's kind of a word play, but it's deliberately, the word in Greek there is onomatopoeia because it's used for the cooing of doves or for the buzzing of bees. Think of it that way. It's these busy bees who are standing outside watching this, and that's why Zeffirelli portrays Peter still standing out there for a while, and Jesus has to reconcile them. But the teachers of the law, the Pharisees, are outside, and they're murmuring amongst themselves just like busy bees complaining. Why is he eating with publicans and sinners? 31. Carolyn, please.
And Jesus answered them, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick.
It's an old Greek word for those who are in good health, those who are whole, those who are healthy. They're not the ones who need the doctor, it's those who are sick. But 32, Brian, please.
I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners to repentance.
This was Jesus using the language that the Pharisees would have used, which was very much to create this division between the righteous or the good people and the sinners. And I mean, that still happens today. From our Lutheran perspective, we go back to Luther's words, simul justus et peccator. We are same time saints and sinners. We're all both and, not either or. But in that society with the religious leaders, very clear distinction between the good people and the bad people. So Jesus uses their language and says, who have I come for?
The sinners.
I've come for the bad people. You can imagine how the Pharisees are going to take that. So they respond by trying to dig a little bit. Terry in 33. Oh, sorry. It's hard to see on the camera.
And they said to him, why do the disciples of John fast often and make prayers, and the disciples of the Pharisees in like manner, but thine eat and drink?
So, John's disciples, they often fasted and prayed, which was very much how the Pharisees practiced their life. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but the Pharisees were basically required to fast 2 days a week. I'm sure everybody would sign up for that quickly. They were willing to fast 2 days a week. So John's disciples seem to kind of keep in that line. John's very much preaching an immediate coming of the kingdom and get your house ready. And so John's disciples seem to be following those customs of fasting. They seem to be praying, making supplications often. Some scholars think that maybe this was happening on one of the fast days. When you've got 2 days a week, so you got two out of 7 that this could be, but it may be that they are raising this because this is happening on a fasting day. The fasting day wasn't necessarily enforced, certainly wasn't enforced on everybody, but those who were the truly good people, the truly good Pharisees, kept these days, and that would tend to lead them to look down on those who did not. So if it is correct that this is happening on one of those days, this is even more digging in. Well, even John, and they didn't like John, but even John's disciples, did this. But you're not even doing that. They go on eating and drinking. Your disciples go on eating and drinking. So Jesus says in 34, now Terry.
Jesus answered, can you make the guests of the bridegroom fast while he is with them?
The construction here is to expect the negative answer. Can you expect the guests of the bridegroom to fast while he's with them? Meaning, Would you go to the wedding party and expect everybody's going to fast? Of course not. That's not what we do. So it was Mondays and Thursdays that the Pharisees, were supposed to fast. Maybe this is one of those days, and he's trying to make a point now. They're trying to make a point, and Jesus is reversing the point. 35, Melissa, please.
But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them. In those days they will fast.
When the bridegroom will be taken, what's he referring to?
Himself.
Himself. And what's
His
going?
crucifixion
Right.
and resurrection and ascension.
Right. The time is coming when he's going to die, be raised, and ascend. And then, especially during that period after the crucifixion, there'll be time to mourn. But right now, this is the wedding feast we're supposed to celebrate now. To explain this, he tells a parable. Karen 36, please.
He told them this parable. No one tears a patch from a new garment and sews it on an old one. If he does, he will have torn the new garment, and the patch from the new will not match the old.
A parable. He's actually going to tell 3 parables here quickly. The parable of the bridegroom, the parable of the patch on the garment, and the parable of the wineskin. No one tears a patch and sews it onto an old one, because if you do, it won't match. Tears. Do you have something besides tears?
Taken. Taken.
No one tears a patch. The word, it can be rends a patch. The word is the basic root word for schism. When we think of schism, what does it mean?
Tearing apart or...
Right, tearing apart, we often use it of churches, or other organizations that have a split. There's a schism. Interesting, Matthew uses this word when he talks about the resurrection, when he talks about crucifixion, back in that part of the story. What do you think Matthew might have used this word in relation to? This one will test you a little bit. When something is torn in two.
Oh, curtain in the temple.
Oh, the curtain being torn.
That would be my guess too. A good guess. That's not it.
Oh.
But I thought I'd catch you on that.
Oh, his clothes.
The garments being torn?
What happens when Jesus dies? Let me read the verse for you.
His garments are torn.
That's going to be in the story too, but that's not this.
Yeah.
It actually does have to deal with the curtain. The same, it talks about the curtain in the temple is torn in two, but also the earth shakes and the rocks are split open. That's the same word here. Think of that. The rocks are actually split open. That's how dramatic this word is for tearing, of this being broken apart. And if you've ever tried that, I mean, I can admit that I have thought I could sew a patch onto a piece of fabric that's old and the patch is new, and it just rips it right apart, right? That's what's being referred to here. It does not work. It will rend the new because it will not agree or not match. The word there is the root word of symphony. What is a symphony? Or symphonize?
Together of instruments.
Right. It won't come together. Has anybody seen Mickey's PhilharMagic at California Adventure? It's like a 3D movie type thing, and shows at Florida, and it's been here a few years now too. And what happens is Mickey's conducting, he has to leave, and Donald Duck decides he's going to conduct. Well, you can imagine how that's going to go. And so when Donald tries to conduct the orchestra, it's just cacophonous sounds from every instrument that can't be brought together. That's kind of the word here, is you can't bring it together. These two things won't fit together. 37, are we at Janet?
Pastor Keith?
Yeah.
At Lent, we sing, rend your heart, not your garments.
Oh, yeah, right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
There's
37, and no one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the skins, and it will be spilled out, and the skins will be ruined.
And why don't you go ahead and read 38, Mr. Acolyte?
All right. No new wine must be poured into new wineskins.
Should be a little bit more there.
And then 39.
No, that's it.
That's the, yeah.
Oh, not all. Okay. There is some difference between manuscripts here. So some of you have the longer, for he says the old is better. That's not in every manuscript, so some translations may leave that out. Two parts to this. No one will put the new wine into the old wineskin. Wineskins at the time were typically made out of goat skin, which was sewn together. New wine expands as it is fermenting. So if you've filled up the skin, what happens?
No place for it to go when it expands.
It explodes, right. When I was in seminary, you know how when you're young, you have all kinds of great ideas. And in the dorm, we had this great idea. We were going to introduce this, we were going to start a small brewery to help finance the seminary. And it was going to be beers based on the reformers, like a Martin Luther and a Philip Melanchthon. You know, there'd be a big market for that, no, undoubtedly. Everybody wants to buy a beer based on that. But the first batch of beer that the guys made, they filled the bottles. What do you think happened to the bottles? They all exploded, because that's what happens as a fermentation process, right? That's basically